the way somebody goes into immigration proceedings, the way it starts and the way it ends, there's usually a lengthy time period that occurs in between the two, right? Unless you're expedited removal at the border. But normally an alien's encountered somewhere, whether it's the border, port of entry, or in the interior. And what happens is that person gets what we call processed, and it goes into a database, and that's our initial encounter with the person. So normally what we do is through questioning, we determine alienage and removability or excludability, and then we create a file. And that becomes a person's alien number. They get an A number. That alien number stays with you. Even if you become a naturalized U.S. citizen, that A number is yours. And you'd be naturalized under that A number. But so once removability is established, we send your file, the charging documents to the court, which is the court of EOIR, which is the Executive Office of Immigration Review. You get calendared for a master calendar hearing or credible fear or an asylum hearing, whatever the case may be. What happens is all ERO's doing at this point in the process is we're just tracking that case in a database. So in other words, you may have had a hearing and the hearing was postponed for 6 months. Well, we have to update it in our end saying, okay, we checked on this case and it was postponed for 6 months, or it was recalendared to next year. The person filed an appeal. The person did this. So a deportation officer's job is to follow that case from the beginning to the end, whether it was created by CBP, Border Patrol, or ERO, or HSI itself. We're the ones that have to maintain it. And so you can only imagine the millions and millions of cases that are out there. Deportation officers have to get through, and they have to keep these cases updated. It could take anywhere. I've seen cases that we encountered, and 6 years later, they were still open with no final orders. They were getting continuances. They were filing motions. They were filing I-130s, and then the judge would say, oh, well, they filed an I-130 and a 485 though, because he married a USC 5 years later, so now they're going to get married. So do we really want to deport somebody who might be eligible for a benefit? And it's a never-ending cycle here. And most of the times we'd wait, because we weren't going to arrest somebody who had documents pending with CIS. If they were going to adjudicate it favorably, why would we arrest them? That was the thinking. Why would we arrest somebody who's eligible for a benefit and could adjust their status, and then deport them knowing when we know that they have this pending? So the rule of thumb was always let the adjudication process work out. If it went through and the adjudication process was denied, well, then the person would be picked up and then placed in proceedings for removal. But so ERO, enforcement removal operations, could only enforce a removal if there's no appeals pending, no habeas is pending. And so there's like a checklist that we use. And so we try to be very thorough in that. But these people run the district courts nowadays. It's a lot different, where it doesn't even have to really be accepted. The clerk could just say, yeah, I got it, and then it stops the removal now, because some districts are honoring them even though they haven't been approved. The mere filing of it stops a removal. And in New York City, there's like a handshake deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office that they don't have to have the habeas approved. They just have to have it filed. And if we know it's filed, we have to stop a removal. That's a handshake deal that went on for 25 plus years. This is what a lot of people don't understand about the removal process. When someone is absolutely done fighting their case, or they gave up or whatever, we still rely on their country to issue a document. So, example, I am from Poland, and immigration caught me. I claimed when I came in I was a Polish citizen, but I don't have a document proving I'm Polish. So normally what they would do is they would contact the Polish consulate or the embassy and say, hey, I have one of your citizens and nationals who was arrested and is deportable, and we're seeking permission to send them back to Poland. So what we do is set up an interview. And most consulates or most embassies want to interview that person. So, like, this is a process that takes time. So now you're on their time schedule, and they say, okay, next week bring them in and we'll interview them. They're interviewing me, and I have to prove to them that I'm Polish. So I would tell them where I was born, where I lived, where I went to school, whatever I knew about me being a Polish citizen. Once they verify it, they give immigration or ICE basically a travel document for that person's removal. This game has changed because cartels have gotten so good at taking people's documents at the border that when these people come, they have no documents whatsoever. So they could be Nicaraguan and they're saying they're El Salvadorian. We really have no idea. What most people don't understand is we're taking their word for what they tell us at the border unless we have documentation that can be confirmed as an identity document. And the cartels is a form of payment. You want your documents back, you have to pay us, or we need to get paid. And then once you're there, you get your documents back, then we'll release it to you. That's what the cartels are doing. But anyway, we go back to my Polish guy. So now Poland says, okay, well, we'll get back to you. And so now you go back, he goes back into custody, back to the facility, and then maybe like a week or two later, Poland will say, okay, we have a document ready for you to pick up, and you could remove him. We need to know the date that you're removing him and the time of arrival. So now we have to make arrangements with an airline, get State Department involved. The State Department's got to then do country notifications to them that we're coming in with a Polish national, and why we're escorting them, so to speak. Even if they're not being escorted, they need to be made aware that somebody's coming back. And so that's 2 more weeks to 3 weeks, because remember, the travel document's only good for a certain amount of time. Some consulates only give you a travel document for 5 days. Some will give it to you for 30 days. You have a limited amount of time to make the removal, and if the person files an appeal, that changes everything. So these attorneys are really good at that. They use the federal district courts, and I think you're seeing it more and more since Trump's been in office. This second term, I believe, I read yesterday that habeases are almost up over 100% from where they were this time last year. So that's like a 100% increase nationwide. And most of them are in the southern states. And why that's significant is because that's where ICE was handling all the detained cases were in Louisiana, Southwest Texas, Arizona. And so those district courts and the southern courts in California have been flooded with habeas cases. And a lot of them are getting released on a habeas. That doesn't mean that they're going to win their case, right? What it means is that the government, meaning ICE, can't remove that person, and that's ultimately their goal. Is they're just kicking the ball down the street further and further and further, so that we have to run farther to execute and get possession of the ball. So it's not like they're going to make it easy for us.